All right, welcome to another edition of Goalie Resiliency. I'm Chris Dawson along with Dr. Rob Graham. He's producer Mike Brown behind the camera. And we have an exciting episode, Rob, talking about a guy who I think both of you and I looked at as and admired, even though I'm a little bit younger than you, but Tony Esposito. And Tony Esposito from Northern Ontario, from Sault Ste. Marie, rest his soul, inspired many goalies. And one goalie that he inspired has become a very successful entrepreneur and an owner of a junior hockey team that I'm very familiar with, the Powassan Voodoos. You had a chat with Jim Bruce.
Yeah, really interesting, Chris. And again, the thing I really love about our podcast is the unique personalities, and I think people are really going to enjoy local entrepreneur story and his connection with Tony Esposito. And for some of our younger folks out there, you're going to have to Google it. I think you're going to be really inspired by today's guest and by today's really unique story.
He was an innovator in many ways, and Jim Bruce is an energetic entrepreneur, and we're going to check out that interview at the beautiful Average Joe's on the shores of Trout Lake.
Wow, we have a really exciting episode for you today on Goaltender Resiliency. I'm joined here on beautiful Trout Lake in our background at Average Joe's. And welcome, Jim Bruce.
Well, nice to be here.
Some people that are local might be saying, well, what is Jim Bruce doing on a Goaltender Resiliency podcast? But in a moment when we dig deep with Jim and we find out his considerable affiliation with growing hockey here in North Bay, but also his past as a goaltender, and we're going to get into that. But before we do that, Jim, let's talk about Jim Bruce, the businessman. We're sitting here on beautiful Trout Lake here at Average Joe's. Tell me a little bit about Jim Bruce, the businessman.
Been an entrepreneur since early 80s. Currently have 4 businesses that I and the family run. Average Joe's happens to be one of them. The Powassan Voodoos hockey team is another. Involved with racehorses, but the main business is that we are one of the largest avocado importers in Canada.
Very interesting. So I'm assuming here the menu at Average Joe's, we should see some avocado type dishes on there?
You do.
No doubt. Well, let's talk about the business at hand, where my partner in crime, Chris Dawson, is the general manager. Let's talk about your involvement with our local Junior A Powassan Voodoos. Tell me a little bit about that and where that may be evolved from.
We are in our 10th year. It actually started when I came from Toronto, Markham to be exact, to retire here in North Bay, which is our hometown. And I was actually having coffee with the coffee boys at Burger World on Hammond Street, and I got talked into starting a Junior A hockey team by Stan Butler and Mike Griffin. They needed to have an affiliate. And I kept saying no, but Remy Rive kept saying, if you go, I'll go. And so I said, well, if you're going to go, I'll go. And then as we got into it, he said, no, I'm out, but my boys will get involved. So that's how it all started. So the 3 brothers, myself, my son, and Ray Sagang, we put together the team in, like I say, 10 years ago.
Wonderful. And I think it's been approximately 10 years that my partner on our Goaltender podcast here, Chris Dawson, has been the GM. Correct me if I'm wrong?
He was our first GM, and he still is our GM.
Wonderful. Well, you're lucky to have him, and I know he is definitely somebody who wears the Powassan Voodoo crest with pride. So let's kind of go to a brain teaser question, Jim, as a businessman and entrepreneur and owner of a Junior A hockey team. How would you say that running a business is like playing goal?
Well, the difference is you want to keep the puck out. In business, you want to keep the money in.
All right, interesting. Well, that's definitely very interesting. But I also know a little bit about you and something off camera we've talked about before. And you've always told me that nobody will ever outwork you. So I'm assuming that playing goal and the parallel being, as I often say to a lot of goalies I work with, is that you should never be outworked. And I'm assuming that's something that's near and dear to your heart, is that whole work ethic.
Well, I'm a firm believer, if you practice hard, you play hard. And if you're not a practice goaltender, you will have a hard time being a good goaltender.
Well, we might want to talk to Billy Smith from the New York Islanders, because rumor has it back in the day when they were a dynasty that he had a no practice clause. That's something we could investigate. And let's talk retro for a moment here, because something totally remarkable in terms of you, Jim Bruce, the goaltender, and your affiliation with the Espositos. And for some of the younger viewers out there, if you don't know who Tony Esposito is and Phil Esposito, then you got to Google it. But let's delve into that, to Jim Bruce, the goaltender. Maybe start, Jim, with you as goalie, and then this incredible story and affiliation that you had with the Espositos.
Well, I think it was 1967. There was a gentleman in North Bay that at that particular time was a Winwell equipment dealer in the area, and he was arranging a trip to bring players to a hockey school in the Sioux run by the Esposito family. And I was fortunate enough that my parents decided it was a good thing for me to do, probably to get out of their hair for the summer. So I ended up going to the Sioux to the hockey school.
Now, Tony Esposito, correct me if I'm wrong, became quite a mentor to you, and you've got some stories that kind of go beyond just the hockey school experience.
Yeah, Tony Esposito was a very quiet individual. He's, I guess we'll say, the first butterfly goaltender, but his motto really was that you needed to work hard and you needed to concentrate at all times while playing a game. And during the hockey school, he would come over and he would say, "Are you tired?" And of course, as a kid, you're never tired. And after 3 or 4 episodes of him saying, "You're tired," and I said, "I'm not tired," I finally asked him, I said, "I don't understand where you're going." And he said, "I don't mean physical, I mean mental." And I thought about it for a second. I still didn't understand. And he said, "Have you ever watched me play?" And I said, "Many times." He said, "Have you ever seen my eyes leave the puck?" And I said, "To be honest, I don't think so." He said, "I follow that puck the whole time it's on the ice." And he said, that is the part of the game that people need to understand. It's a mental game. You have to concentrate. You have to follow the puck even if it goes into the stands. So you have to know your surroundings.
And Jim, one of my big passions is working with young goaltenders at all levels on the mental side of the game. And so for me, that's a really interesting insight, because as goalies evolve and go up the food chain, I tend to believe that it's kind of that mental acuity and goalie IQ that separates who gets to that next level. That's a really interesting story. So now you have a retro piece of equipment here. So I know that my co-host here, Chris Dawson, has a number of Jofa helmets. Tell me a little bit about what you brought in here.
Well, this is one of the old pieces that I've kept from part of my hockey career, and every now and then it gets pulled out and gets looked at, and it brings back some memories. So it's an old Jofa. It's I don't know how old it is, but guessing it's probably from late 70s, early 80s.
So let's talk about Jim Bruce as the goaltender. Correct me if I'm wrong, a storied career with the Schollard Hall Bears. Yes,
Schollard Hall starting in 1968, ending in 1972. So back in our day, high school hockey used to fill the gardens, and it was very competitive, and a lot of really good hockey players. And we had a pretty good hockey team. There was a lot of good hockey players: Marco Cardoni, Sandro Orlando, Bill Curry, Darcy Mulligan, Dennis Kennelly, Claude Riopello. I mean, that's just a few. Carmen Anello, Claudia Michuli. I'm going to miss a few guys because I don't remember them all, but there was a lot of good hockey players, and we were pretty successful.
Well, and I have not been from North Bay. I have heard some amazing stories about that era and time. Now that you started to kind of name drop some of the hockey players that come out of North Bay, let's kind of go back to the Powassan Voodoos. And I have here a number of goalies that have been developed and that have come out of the Powassan Voodoos organization. And I'll give a couple. I've had an opportunity to actually work with a couple of them, but we have Matt Young, who went to NCAA Division III. We had Garrett Forrest, Flint Firebirds OHL and the Ryerson U Sports Club. Nate McDonald, who I'm currently fortunate enough right now, as Nate is now the goaltending coach for the North Bay Battalion. I had a chance to be on the ice early in his career, but now I do some work with Nate with goaltending. He went NCAA Division I with Cornell, which is no small accomplishment. Christian Chichigo, Lakehead U Sports, the Battalion. Owen Say, who is one that I know that Chris Dawson really talks a lot about. And then Big Joe Verbetic from the Battalion. Any names there, any stories that come to mind with kind of dropping some of those names?
Nate McDonald, for sure. I remember we had a camp in Barrie, Ontario. He had played AAA in Toronto area, came up to camp, and he looked pretty impressive. And at that particular time, there was some discussion, and he was offered a position on the team, and it didn't take he and his parents very long to agree. And he came up here. He was on the championship team. Just a great individual, very good goaltender. I know at that stage, pretty good teammate, support from mom and dad. He was just an overall really good young man.
And it's interesting you say that because I've had the opportunity to be on Nate. We're doing some work with our AAA goalies here in town. And I'll often say to my goalies that, just being a leader on the ice is only one facet. You have to lead on the bench, lead in the dressing room, lead in school. And so Nate, 100%, I think, as you're saying, has led in all of those areas. Very interesting. Okay, Jim, flipping the sheet back over here. Let's go to 5 silly questions as we start to wrap up this interview. And you're not immune from 5 silly questions, even though we just recently featured our Young Gun series. We'll put you in the Young at Heart Gun series. How's that? Go for it. All right. So here we go. 5 silly questions. First one is, Jim, we're on beautiful Trout Lake right here at Average Joe's, but I'm going to give you the option of fast car, fast boat, or fast motorcycle.
Fast car.
Any particular brand or preference?
A 2012 Mercedes-Benz AMG Roadster.
Ooh, nice choice. Is that a car that you currently own?
Yes.
I might like to have a drive in that one day, if I may. That very nice, beautiful. Okay, here we go, Jim. You are on a date at Average Joe's with your wife. What are you ordering?
I will be ordering probably the prime rib. Interesting.
With a side dish of avocado?
Most definitely.
All right. Old school. Choice of a 2-pad stack or a reach for the sky, flash the leather save. What are you taking?
2-pad stack.
You gotta love the 2-pad stack, right? Yeah, gotta love the 2-pad stack. Okay. You are the originator of Boatapalooza, and those of you that aren't familiar with what Boatapalooza is, I'm fortunate enough that I get to play in a band called Maple Hill Project that actually regularly plays at Boatapalooza. Google it. We're inviting you to play an instrument with Maple Hill Project. What would that instrument be?
It would probably be the same instrument you play, the drums.
Well, I always knew you were a rock star, and we all know that the drummer sets the tempo, just like the goaltender sets the tempo for the team. So, yeah, you know what? Interesting. Goalies, I do find goaltending and drumming very interesting metaphor there. Very cool.
Our positioning is the same. We're in the back looking front.
That's true. We sit at the back, but we lead from the back. Well, I'll tell you what, next Bodapalooza, you're coming up for a drum solo.
Count me in.
Awesome. That's going to happen. Okay. If you've ever watched the podcast, you know the final question. I'm wearing my Rolling Stones t-shirt here because I do consider myself a bit of a rock star, as you are. So it's Game 7, and they invite owner Jim Bruce in to take control of the music. Basically, you get control of the stereo. Game 7. What song's playing, Jim?
You Are the Champions.
Now, that's a great title. We are the champions. And you are a champion, Jim. We thank you for everything that you do locally for developing and supporting hockey players. We thank you for offering us average Joes on beautiful Trout Lake. And keep grinding. And thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you.
Wow, a great connection. Like, can you imagine getting being able to tell people that Tony Esposito bought you goalie skates, like Jim Bruce's story? And certainly when you get a guy like that teaching you, obviously is very inspirational. We always talk about resiliency and things that keep us going. And for Jim Bruce to get that connection early in his hockey life to meet and get to know Tony Esposito sounds like it's pretty special.
Well, and again, for viewers out there, just Google Tony Esposito and brother Phil Esposito from Sault Ste. Marie, 1972, boys and girls, you know, probably one of the most famous hockey series ever. I was blown away by that. I didn't know that. You hadn't given me the pre-prep on that, and I don't even know if you knew his connection to that, right?
He had told me a little bit about it, but he had never been went into as in depth, and that's the whole thing that we love about Goalie Resiliency is getting those unique, special stories that inspired. And obviously talking about some of the great goalies he's very proud of as a Voodoos owner, and championship goalie Nate McDonald, who's been in here, Owen Say, who was at the Pittsburgh Penguins camp and is playing with Notre Dame this year, and a lot of really great goalies. And I know Jim Bruce is very proud of the guys, the last line of defense. And certainly one of the things I always think about Tony Esposito is how innovative he was with equipment. He was really the first goalie. I know Dave Dryden was the first one to go with the full cage kind of mask kind of combo, as they called it. But Tony was the first one to ever put a cage, but he put his cage literally over top of his eye holes, because you just think of it now, a puck coming at 100 miles an hour, and I mean, it still rattles the cage. We taught here concussions with the, these $1,000, protective helmets that, an astronaut could wear. They're so protective, and yet they still, it still hurts. But you can imagine getting a puck when the plastic is like just at the edge of your cheekbone, like the broken cheekbones that goalies got back then. And he was an innovator and made that unique cage. And certainly, I mean, I know he's also another one. I know Jacques Plante's kind of the one that's credited, but a lot of the butterfly style, Tony went down a lot more than a lot of the goalies did in the late 70s and early 80s.
Now, you being GM of the Powassan Voodoos, and of course Jim Bruce being the owner, I'm just going to give you one tip, and no disrespect, Jim, but please do not let Jim become your goalie coach. I think he loves Tony Esposito, but we had some theoretical differences on how to catch a puck, and so that was really interesting. I think Jim is...
You're going to get in trouble, but that's all right.
Anyways, yeah, very cool. And, speaking of that, and Tony Esposito and his gear, when we recently were at the goalie demo days, I offered a young goalie by the name of Jack what we called the Koho Pad Challenge. And we gave this young goalie, Jack, the opportunity to actually go out and take some reps in these retro style pads. So let's go to that right now, because I think you're going to find that really fascinating. All right, I am here with Jack. He is a gamer, and Jack has taken the Koho Retro Goal Pad Challenge, and so he has my goal pads on from the 1970s. Jack's been here at the Source for Sports here at the demo days trying all the new gear. Well, he's going to get an appreciation for that new gear here very quickly as he goes out and he tries these pads. How are you feeling right now, Jack?
Feeling a little nervous, but I'm going to try some moves from the past and see if it works.
So I'm feeling there could be a 2-pad stack somewhere in here.
Maybe a couple.
All right.
We'll see.
And I did notice that you were reflecting that you had to have mom help you put the pads on. It was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, no, I don't understand how you guys did that, but
Well, back in the day, my co-host and I, Chris Dawson, this was our life, buddy. Well, we really appreciate you stepping up to the plate on this one. So we're going to give you some time out on the ice, get you to take some shots, and then we'll follow up. So have fun.
yeah, I will.
Jack, that was an astounding display of retro goaltending. What are your reflections having taken the Koho challenge? What are you thinking?
I think I should have been playing with those pads, but it's a big difference. A lot heavier, a lot harder to move around with, but fun.
Well, you know, Jack, you are definitely a real gamer. You're a character kid, I can tell that. You know, goaltending is as much about being a character and a team player. You've definitely been a team player today. Thank you for taking the Koho Goalie Pad Challenge. Maybe, you know what, you are a retro guy at heart, and I know that my co-host, Chris Dawson, he's going to be amazed to see this footage. So keep up the good work. I hope that you continue to have fun in your journey as a goaltender, and we really do appreciate you taking that Koho Goaltender Challenge today.
Well, thank you. It was fun.
All right, interesting. Certainly a unique perspective with the pads. We have these Bowers behind us where they're hard as a rock, and we had Ben Gaudreau talking about how much he loved a hard pad, and the harder the better, right? The pads you let poor Jack wear. Puck hits those pads, you're maybe kicking it out maybe a foot. And you got to put a lot of beef behind that kick to get that puck to bounce out off those. And they literally call them pillows for a reason, didn't they?
For sure. And I think it was funny to watch Jack. He'd obviously watched some retro YouTube videos on older goalies because he was doing the 2-pad stacks, and it was really interesting. Producer Mike and myself kind of watching the parents and the other people watch Jack taking shots. So, you know, it was just a really fun opportunity. And, you know, I think what we do here, Chris, is you know, you're the real kind of historical, and you focus on the archives, and I think we're giving a good sense of heritage, you know, for some of the younger goalies too, and going back to the roots of goaltending. And I've always said, you know, as a goalie to my goalies that I work with, you know, you really have to be a scholar of the game. So having an opportunity to see, you know, some of the challenges that Tony Esposito had to overcome, not just mentally, but just in terms of the equipment, right, on a day-to-day basis. I think that really, you know, giving a younger generation that opportunity, I think there's a lot of value in that.
I think a lot of value would be getting you in that gear. And maybe getting you in the gear, raising some money for a good cause, and getting you on the ice in your old pads, because I know that's something that I would love to see at least. So
that sounds like a challenge to me.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks so much for watching Goalie Resiliency. That was episode 11. Thanks so much for everybody for watching. Thank you so much to our talented producer, Mike Brown, who puts in a lot of time and effort to get these shows done. And we look forward to more on the way. We're going to hit 12 coming up soon.
Wow.
So that's really fantastic. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time to Goalie Resiliency.